pedals clunking. My art of war, mental function. Got me on some out the door, about to settle something. Whatever it is, whatever it was. When these wolves get the scent of blood, they never give up. I'm sick of these whack bitches who got no idea what it's like to be broke as fuck with dope ideas. You don't know what it is to be hungry on the ones, on the humble. Low down, limping with a stumble. Peep the gates we keep, we awake, you sleep. No key, still low key, we break the beat. The wolves ate the sheep, kid, talk is cheap. Money talks, but money scared to walk the streets. All I used to need was dungeon noise, bass drums, and we prepared for war. When I was young and I was climbing trees to reach the top, my razor chop all these blind MCs out the speaker box, a shadow box, all your frequencies, your punch drunk. Drunks get punched the fuck out and punked, it's hardcore. More than an art form, it's art of war, it's life or death. Escape the viper's nest of carnivores. From haunted shores, ghost pirates swarming, wanting yours. Now how the fuck am I not music to the struggles here? My tongue is steel, cut the strings to the puppeteer. I walk the line blindfolded with no lights on. When the mic's on, it's countdown till your life's gone.
Welcome back to Black Hoodie Alchemy, folks. I am Anthony Tyler. Thank you very much for joining me. We have a very special guest in today. We'll get to that gentleman in just a moment. So today, we're going to talk about Philip K. Dick. I'm sure that I'd be surprised if there's anyone listening to this show that was unfamiliar with Philip K. Dick, but I think most people, if you're familiar with the name at all, you know Blade Runner, we go through the movies real quick, his works that inspired the movies that you will have at least heard of, Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report, Paycheck, and A Scanner Darkly. We also are going to talk a little bit about ELVIS here, mostly going to be Philip K. Dick, but I have a man that has been very steeped in some ELVIS esoterica here on the show with me, and he's got a book coming out next year with a legit publisher and everything about this subject, so we can't not talk about it. I'm excited to get into both of these subjects. We got Miguel Conner here of Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Yes, the empire never ended, as Philip K. Dick said. One of his more famous quotes, and seems to be more relevant than ever. That meme about how often men think about the Roman Empire has become so viral. And as I say, the empire never ended. Rome still exists underneath this hologram.
It's so true. Yeah. Philip K. Dick was a guy, it's easy if you only hear the surface level of his story, his biography and his life philosophies. It might be quick to say, like, oh man, that guy was falling really far off the deep end. But then you listen to some of the preserved interviews that he had, or you go and read what we'll get into a bit more, Philip K. Dick's Exegesis, which is a lot like Carl Jung's Black Books. It's this alchemical, massive tome of Dick just wrestling with his personal philosophies. But so the more you look into how he articulated these really wild concepts, of time and space and metaphysics, you find that he was so cogent throughout the whole thing. So you could certainly argue, as Dick, was the first to admit the possibilities of that there was some sort of, neurological issue going on, some temporal lobe, epilepsy potentially, I think that was tossed around a bit. Different neurological possibilities. I heard in an interview he hypothesized, how what the implications would be of like his right and left hemispheres interacting with each other in a very Jungian projective sort of sense. He was really open to a lot, and he also talked about Jung a lot, especially in this one particular interview. It's like 2 hours. I'll put that in the show notes here. But I've listened to that many times. I find it to be very insightful. And he, I think if we were going to put this in terms of vernacular that we use here on this show, like I said, it's very similar to Jung's Red and Black Books. It's the same sort of motif of what he was trying to work through. And the the tutelary encounters with this entity, essentially. Philip K. Dick was a very mystically minded individual. It seems to be very, very directly, like, if Jung were diagnosing Philip K. Dick, he would say without question that this was a very powerful, ongoing, interactive relationship with his anima. And Dick described this tutelary deity entity, if you will, being feminine. But there's a lot to unpack here. We'll get into all this. Miguel, to give context for listeners here, that may only just understand the surface level, how would you try and broach this subject?
Dick's visions, or what subject exactly?
Well, that's a good question, because this is a very sprawling subject, and we'll get into a little bit of Philip K. Dick as a person and different things, but yeah, let's dive into it. Let's dive into the meat of it here, and talk about some of his visions, like this one, the pink laser beam. That's the one that if you're going to look into anything mystical about PKD, you find commentary on this concept, this experience he had pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would. I know that one's the famed one, the 2374.
Right.
Although what most people get wrong is that there was no pink beams. I think the pink beams came later, while he was listening to Strawberry Fields Forever by the Beatles. And he saw this like strawberry light, and he had this vision saying that his son was very sick, had, I think, a hernia, and needed to be rushed to the hospital. And Dick, he was listening with his headphones, and he pulled his headphones. He went to Tessa Dick, his wife at the time, and said, our son's going to die. We need to go to the hospital. Tessa entertained his idea, and once they got to the doctor, it was exactly right. He was able to predict his son's hernia, and they operated, and it actually saved the kid's life. So 2374 came before, and that's the famous one with the light shining off the woman's fish necklace, and suddenly the hologram came down. Well, the story. He had a toothache, and he asked, in the days where you could get drugs from the pharmacy, nobody asked questions. So this lady delivered these drugs for his toothache, and he opened the door, and he looked at her fish necklace, the Christian fish, Jesus one, and there was some sparkling in it, and all of a sudden it hit him, and reality collapsed, and he had this vision that we were indeed, again, the empire never ended. We were living in Roman's time. It was a holograph that the Roman Empire created to continue its power, sort of behind the scenes, and every empire that has existed is the Roman Empire. And Phil saw himself as the Apostle Paul, part of these secret Christians that were trying to fight the Roman Empire and these powers above them, which of course the Gnostics call the demiurge and the archons, these extraterrestrials, interdimensional beings that were ruling this earth and keeping mankind asleep. The funny thing is, Tessa Dick swears that he wasn't really looking at her necklace, that he was looking at her tits, because she was that's what she said, and that's what caused the vision. So I'm like, yeah, that's fine. We're men, things like that happen. Yeah. But it's always hard when you do these biographies, because there's always conflicting stories. And of course, Dick was just, as a writer, he tended to embellish. He tended sometimes to change details, or he would replace what happened to him with the story of another author. He was basically, Dick was a troller, a shitposter sometimes when he felt like it. I've noticed too, writing this Elvis bio, Elvis was the same way, and how many people, the stories don't align and we do the best. And as I write in my book, Elvis Presley and Philip K. Dick have such similar eerie parallels, which we can get into. But the one thing that most people always sort of overlook is that that's not really his first most impactful vision. He had one in the early 60s where he was going through a bad time in his life. He was getting a divorce. What was it? He was getting a divorce. I think it was his third wife, and he was living in California, and he had this little hut or a shack where he used to write. Yeah, he was getting a divorce from his wife Anne, and he was taking a lot of amphetamines, and so he was going through a
Yeah.
really bad time in his life. And he was walking to the shack to go right, and suddenly the sky opened, and he saw this horrible dark face. It was like metallic, pure metal, and it was pure evil. He could sense this cosmic, pervasive, overwhelming evil that ruled the entire universe. And he freaked out. He was like he like ran off or something like that. And he that really sent him on a rabbit hole, because what happened, he freaked out. He told a psychiatrist about the vision, but he also went to a priest at the Episcopal Church, and the priest told him, of course, well, it was probably Satan, all that. He gave Dick holy unction, which is a special sacrament to heal the sick. And Phil just kept thinking about this vision, this whatever it was, the demiurge, Satan, pure evil that had appeared in the sky. But that led him down to understand. It led him close to the Episcopal Church. He joined it. He became a full-time Christian, if you would, but he got really interested in the transubstantiation. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, and the whole communing thing. But because of that led him to Jung and his ideas about communion and the host and all that, and that eventually led him into Gnosticism. So that's an important vision that most people forget about or overlook.
Yeah. His metaphysical outlooks are really interesting because he was fairly steeped on and off throughout his life, like with direct Christianity, but then that bled into, like, I guess what you would call a Christian Gnosticism, much more as time progressed. And particularly in this interview that I enjoy so much, it doesn't even really have a name that I know of, but it's around on the internet. It's been
Right.
shared around in several different forms. But he clearly is, throughout his fascination with Christianity. I'm sure he was probably born into it to one degree or another. He's always he maintained fascinations with Buddhism and Greek and Roman philosophy, and talks a lot about Gnosticism. So and of course Jung as well. So he's very, very well versed in comparative religious philosophy. And I have not read this book, Flow My Tears, the policeman said, but there's some interesting synchronicities around this book as well, that I found in my research. I've brought up to you before, as well as at some point on this podcast, the anecdote that PKD gives about how he found a rat in his house and he tried to kill the rat over and over again, because he was just trying to put it out of its misery. And he laments, I would have let this rat go if I could have, but it was already caught by the trap and wounded, so I just had to kill it. And he said it felt just as torturous for him as it seemed to be for the rat, and he felt monstrous. And it brought him to this whole Buddhist idea of, could there even be a creator with this kind of suffering? And it really it became a catalyst for his fascination with the demiurge and explaining that vision of that face in the sky a bit more. And apparently, and I don't really have further context to elaborate this, but he does go into in the interview, as I listened over it again recently, that the spirit of the rat, so he buried that rat with apparently a St. Christopher medal, he says, and he put that character of the spirit of the rat in that book, Flow My Tears, the policeman said. So that impacted him very deeply. And also that book has a reputation for being, some people speculate that he, channeled that in some way or another because he wrote it feverishly, extremely quickly. Didn't even really give it much thought after it was done, just tried to put it out there. And it had all the basic tenets of the book, the characters and the double lives they were leading, the names of the characters and how they related to each other, all ended up playing out in succession in his life in such a way that he ended up going to a priest about it. And the priest told him that these, he didn't quite use this language, but he said that, the story you're describing and the synchronicities you have that relate to this book, it all comes from the book of Acts in the Bible. And so that, snowballed a lot further for him. But we also, I'd like to pick your brain about Valis, because as I did a little bit of research, I'm quite familiar with Dick and his work, but it's massive and intimidating. And I have not read Valis. As I did the research, I came to realize that that's something absolutely quintessential if you're trying to understand the philosophies of Philip K. Dick. I knew it was one of his greatest works and it was on my list, but now I fully understand how essential it is. And it's the Valis trilogy, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's Valis, the Divine Invasion, and the Transmigration of Timothy Archer. And they're not related. Valis is Dick's exploration with Christian Gnosticism. The Divine Invasion is his exploration into Jewish Gnosticism, the Kabbalah. And then the third book is more about the Dead Sea Scrolls and reincarnation and dying. And there are three excellent novels. They were one of his last ones, and these were certainly fueled by his 2374. In fact, the novel Valis does have Philip K. Dick and his alter ego, Horse Lover Fat, and it is a fiction, but it is just full of his sort of side notes and philosophical quotes. It's got separate sections where he talks about what he did is, as he was doing the exegesis, which was him just compiling all of his philosophies and visions and ideas into this massive 1,000+ page tome. He took a lot of those and the most important, or at the time the more salient ones, and he put them in Valis. So Valis was certainly my, you might say, crystallization or red pill to Gnosticism, because I'd been, at the time years ago, I was reading the Nag Hammadi Library, the Gnostic Gospels, and it was it was moving something within me, but I still wasn't getting it. And Philip K. Dick's Valis definitely it was made it all clear as one of those aha, because he does such an excellent job throughout all of his career of tying in these philosophical, mythical, and ancient religion ideas into science fiction, modern themes, and so forth. And it just clicked so well. He was brilliant at it throughout his career, but yeah, towards the end of his life, he was certainly a Gnostic. Even in the exegesis, he says, "I am a Gnostic, and I'm not happy about it." Simon Magus lives. He's understanding that he's embraced this Gnostic worldview fully, of course, but he always considered himself a Christian and Episcopalian. But he sees really how the universe is structured is very. What works for him is how the Gnostics viewed the universe.
Yeah, fascinating. So what I don't think there's any, I don't think you could really spoil something like this at this point. What would you care to go into some of the contents of Valis? Because I know that is aside from Blade Runner, which is the one that sticks in everyone's head the most, Valis seems to be the one that he's known for the most.
Yeah, I mean, Valis is very speculative and it tends to be surreal. It's about, again, Philip K. Dick with his alter ego and friends in California trying to deal with issues in their life, but somehow this they start seeing the reality about society, and then they find that there's this savior figure called Sophia, which was very important to the Gnostics, the sort of
Right.
a divine feminine counterpart of Jesus. And it's a story of them trying to see how Sophia will help the world, and other issues too. Then there's obviously David Bowie's "The Man Who Fell to Earth" is a bit, well, again, he calls it something else, but that's a big another part. But it's very speculative and again non-linear. The version that he did, if somebody wants to read a more traditional science fiction version, is get Radio Free Albemuth, either the novel or there was a movie made of it. And that is basically Valis, but all the mysticism and Gnostic speculation is sort of taken out. And then this is more of a hard-boiled science fiction about how we live in a dystopian, oppressive world, and these characters who are caught in the trap of some of these major players, and how there's a revolution against to overthrow the tyrannical government that is ruling this country almost secretly. The president is basically part of this deep dark organization, and so forth. So if your readers want more something more traditional, do that. Like, for example, my co-host for Aeon Byte, Vance, he likes Radio Free Albemuth better, but I prefer Valis. But both are very well written and very powerful, and very disturbing too, because Dick does a great job at really showing really the truth about our culture. It's that famous saying by Ray Bradbury, "I don't try to predict the future, I try to avoid it."
Yeah.
And that's what Dick does. And when you start reading Radio Free Albemuth or Valis, you realizing, you go, God damn, this is like USA 2023. So it's really uncanny. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but Dick was I think his brilliance wasn't just predicting what would happen. There's so much that he was writing about in the 50s, face recognition, self-driving cars, spray-on clothes, all that he really hit on the nail. There's giant lists you can go on the internet. But the truth is, most science fiction writers, the good ones, they'll get 80% right. Dick was probably closer to 90%. If you write enough, it's like The Simpsons. They predicted the future. Well, when you have like 500 episodes, you're going to get a lot right, especially if you're trying to create a satire, or if you're trying to create a treatise on American culture. But what
Right.
Dick did the best is he really predicted the atmosphere of where we lived. We're not really in an Orwellian or an Aldous Huxley future yet. We're getting there, but we are more in what Dick did. It's a very consumerist, shallow world where our culture is just decaying. It seems everything's broken. Our religions are broken. Our politics are broken. Our gods are broken, and we just don't know what to do with it. And there's sort of this duality where he talks, you see it in Blade Runner, right? There are the technocrats who live very well, and they're creating amazing things like rockets to the moon and all in space exploration and inventions. Yet there's this middle class and lower class that lives on the shadows, and this these broken down cities and streets and technology. It's kind of working, and the only one that really works well are surveillance tools and so forth. So Dick really gets the texture of where we are in the 21st century. I would say probably easily better than any other writer. Maybe others like William Gibson and so forth did a good job, but he really nails where we're going and how we're just living in this very I don't know what to say, melancholic, delusional, decaying world where technology just keeps moving forward, but society just keeps collapsing.
Yeah. Yeah, Blade Runner, and that whole story really articulates it well. That's burned in my brain so well, the book and the movie. I grew up with it. Since a kid, I was really fascinated with how well that movie blended the glitz of technology with the ruggedness of like dystopian noir, and
Right.
it's still pretty unrivaled.
Yeah,
But
you see this. You're starting to see this in San Francisco, New York, and Chicago. They're turning into Blade Runner sets.
right, yeah, absolutely. And I when I finally read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I was actually bricklaying in like right outside of San Francisco. So I was working in San Francisco for most of it, and I was even doing some work in the surrounding areas. So it was especially interesting to me, being able to see a lot of the actual places that he was referencing in the book, and it just kind of gave it a deeper significance for me. So I I have a soft spot for that whole story. But as dark as it is, and for those of you, I know there's a lot of you out there that have seen Blade Runner and not read that book. Definitely read that book. It's not too long either. It's not like The Stand by Stephen King. It's like 250 pages or something.
It's a lot less. Yeah, and it's different than Blade Runner, but again, you've got this Dickian essence in it. Obviously, Ridley Scott changed a lot of
Mhm.
things, but Dick was happy. He was very happy. He got to see some of the first screenings and all that, and he was fine with it. But the true, like, Dickian soul is certainly very apparent in it. Obviously, the big difference, too, is that Dick in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, he never thought that replicants or AI could be conscious. That was one thing he was completely against. While Ridley Scott went the other way, Ridley Scott went the technocratic way and said, "Oh, of course they can." You know, the whole Voight-Kampff test, which is basically an empathy test. But Dick
Right.
always thought that machines could never. He thought that what made us human and that what made us divine, the idea that we had a divine spark or a soul, was our ability for empathy. And he just thought that no machine could ever have a sense of empathy.
Very good point. Yeah, still highly debatable. I would, I feel like I definitely lean more towards uh, the Dick side of the debate, but I don't know. There's a there's a lot about technology that I do not understand.
Yeah, yo, it's like he's living in Cybertron. The homocycles and impersonators, vipers and them terminators, fighters with the thirst for papers. Where violent crime is common in the search for wages. Despite the times that we find ourselves immersed in pages, trying to find a method to see his grind reflected. Design is faded, calculated rhyme that I suggested. The only factor in the climb is the time invested. But these are wrapped up in this prime that got his mind infested with the evils. This kid done got himself addicted with that lethal shit injected with the needles. Now he's well connected with the weasels. Neglected by his peep, disrespected and rejected by his equals. Son, they put him on blast. He walks the gravel on his own. They say he's just a brat that traveled down the wrong path. So every night this kid fights with his likeness. His conscience tries to tell him that he's righteous, but my nigga, we recognize
It's all in the eyes. We read them and see them for what they are. Streets full of surprises. The harsh realities of life. We recognize who lies. It's all in the eyes. We read them and see them for what they are.
Howdy do, everybody. It's your good old friend Tippy Patson here from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And behold, for I have something to lay upon you. Okay? Recently, I smoked this drug called a bazuco. It's from Colombia. My buddy gave it to me. And it's cocaine paste. You see? And I recently been doing some of this, and it occurred to me that last night, after some Google searching, what happened to me after smoking some bazuco was I achieved Tibetan rainbow body. How about that, y'all? Yeah, my body shrank. I got all real tiny. I started like emitting rainbows from my body, and like I smelled really good, as they say. That the people do. And dang old man, I even, I didn't die. I'm good. I'm still good right here, but I even lost a few pounds. So I was thinking, how about I just go dang old on and sell Tippy Patson's Rainbow Body Weight Loss Program. Dang on, man, that's right. Shed a few pounds the Tibetan Buddhist way. And, you can go to my website, Tippy Patson and all that, or you can dial 1-800-SpaceLawyers.com for more info. Now, a part of this is you need to know more about this bazooka drug, okay? It's very interesting, and it helped me in the whole process of achieving Rainbow Body. And it's, like I said, it's a cocaine paste. It's extracted not in laboratories, but like good old fashioned, like in people's kitchens and stuff. And it's extracted and dissolved with things like gasoline, sulfuric acid, chloroform, kerosene, acid from car batteries, and then it's cut, to make bigger and give it a little bit of a punch with Ajax, talcum powder, ground up bricks or cornstarch and things like that. And on the streets, they call it things like Suzuki, banana, little devil, and freckles. So it's a real dang old fun thing to smoke, and it tastes real good, y'all. So, smoke some bazooka and, partake in Tippy Patson's Rainbow Body Weight Loss Program, y'all. Come on, let's do it together. We'll be small, tiny people with a Rainbow Body way, and then it'll be a good time. All right, take it easy, everybody.
Has gravity got you down? Do you not understand the difference between a wave or a particle? What about the planets? How do all those rotate around each other? Laws of physics and other sciences can be confusing. So the next time you're curious just how exactly E equals MC squared, hire a highly trained and qualified professional. That's right, it's Space Lawyers. Space lawyers are skilled in litigation with the laws of time, space, cosmic ghost pirates, and various other lawyerings. Each space lawyer has a PhD in space law from the Cosmic Hall of Space Justice, and they can get you out of just about any sticky situation. So stop bonking your head on things, or accidentally creating big bangs with your haphazard studies in quantum physics. Leave all of that to the highly trained professionals prepared to litigate these laws for you. Just call 1-800-SpaceLawyer.com for more info.
Space lawyer?
Space lawyers cannot be used in a regular court of law. They can only accept cash and no cosmic traveler checks nor Visa debit cards. Please wait up to 4 cosmic business days for our space lawyers to get back to you. Hello, everybody. It's your friend Jefferson Tillamook Slinger codename. Yeah, I don't have any products to sell you at the moment, but I did have to, I just wanted to let everybody know that I recently watched this Aminal Planet documentary about how mermaids and merpeople actually exist. And also dragons exist too. I mean, Aminal Planet wouldn't make these things up. It's very 100% true, just about as true as Bill Hicks being Alex Jones. So, supposedly the theory is, when we were used to be the monkeys, some of the monkeys, like, ended up hanging up close to the water, and, like, instead of getting all hairy, they got really scaly, and, like, had a bunch of, like, gills and, like, fins and stuff, like, really crazy. And, if you watch the Aminal Planet documentary, they have, like, these super realistic, like, accounts where you could see, like, the mermaid, like, his hand, his little webbed hand is up against the glass, and, like, it's, like, very realistic, like the best PS2 cutscenes I've ever seen in my life. So, I guess mermaids are actually a thing. You know, mermaids and merpeople. So, is it illegal to own one? Is the question I want to know.
I would like to own a mer person. I know we couldn't have the dolphins around here anymore, but maybe a mer dude would be pretty fun. Or maybe a mer lady. I'm not sure. I guess we could cross that bridge when we get there. Anyway, mer people are people too. So, and dragons exist. So, pretty crazy shit. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Playing bottom.
It was a stone group, my man. You are the most right. Yeah, right. Just get the fuck out, man. Let's go.
I have some quotes here. This is just a very small little bit that I read from an article. I'll have it in the show notes. Ryan Britt, whoever he is, shout out to him because I thought it was a very concise quote. And I wanted to read just for anybody. It's not a word that you hear hardly ever outside of the conversation of Philip K. Dick, but exegesis in the dictionary is a critical explanation or interpretation of a text, especially of scripture. So it's pretty much exactly what we've been saying, him just really wrestling, with no discernible end in sight, all these different concepts and experiences that he had. And this quote here, it says, you could go so far as to say that Philip K. Dick, at some point in his life, refused to actually understand the differences between art, personal interactions, reality, conciseness, and unconciseness. If forced to oversimplify his ideas via his own preserving machine, which is a reference to another work that he gave in the little article here, says, I would characterize the exegesis of Philip K. Dick as follows. If thoughts created the universe instead of physical objects, this is the entire universe wrapped up in a triple-decker sandwich which has infinite length. The sandwich also may or may not be conceptual. So take that for what you will. For such a rambling, 1,000-page work, that was the only person I found that was even willing to take a stab at trying to synthesize what the fuck the exegesis is even about. So,
yeah.
But
it's hard because it's even contradictory because he's trying to interpret his vision. he 2374 and the Strawberry Field one were so monumental, and there were some other ones, and of course this goes all back to the face in the sky vision. Those are the only ones he had, and he was frustrated, so he kept like Jung, he kept attacking it. He kept saying it could be this, it could be extraterrestrials, I could be delusional. It could be, based on the Hindu myths. It could be Gnostic. And he just kept playing around, sort of, might say, active imagination, free-form writing or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people with the exegesis, just look at it as a wonderful meditative tool. Open it up, read some of it, speculate upon it, and then parallel them to others of his ideas, because again, it's not linear. It's just it's almost like the soul of the universe opened up and gave all the different ideas that could happen, from parallel universes to holographic universe to everything that could be happen, and it's all right there in the exegesis.
Yeah, it's certainly, unless you just really want to, it's not even something that necessarily should be read linearly, it sounds like.
No, you're courting madness like Dick. You're courting madness like Dick, which is what we mystics should do, right?
So I'd like to ask you, I'm going to read a little bit more of some quotes here, and then I'd like to ask you, just open-endedly, what you think this said about Philip K. Dick as a person, because you and I are very well familiar with the idea that genius and insanity have a sizable overlap in the Venn diagram, and I'm just curious what you think this means in because we've tossed a lot of mystical language, and I'm just curious what you think this means on like a real world sort of view that expands outward into the metaphysics. Like, what do you think he might have been dealing with? What potential psychological things may have snowballed into these revelations. But on the note of his own struggles, before I volley that to you, this is, I believe this is from The Guardian, but like I said, everything that I'm reading from, you'll find in the show notes. The exegesis shows the struggle of a highly intelligent man to find a rational explanation for something inexplicable inside himself. And it could make fascinating reading if it was thoughtfully organized. But the exegesis pursues its target in the manner of a shotgun firing randomly in every possible direction. Dick ruminates, conjugates, and associates freely from one topic to the next. He mulls the contents of his dreams, descends into labyrinths of metaphysical hypotheses, and ironically wonders how he can ever use this material to create a publishable book. Nor does he succeed in explaining the source of his visions. And this sounds a little snarky, but the article gives him his due credit. Just wanted to throw that out there. But the editors of the work acknowledge it could have been merely a stroke, residual brain damage from drug use, or temporal lobe epilepsy, but they seem unimpressed by pedestrian possibilities. They insist that to approach the exegesis from any angle at all, a reader must first accept that the subject is revelation. We receive no help from the editors in mapping the tangle. But as Richard Doyle, a professor of English and Information Sciences and Technology at Penn State, writes in his afterword, when you begin reading the exegesis, you undertake the quest with no shortcuts or cheat codes. Thus, we're on our own when we ponder sentences like, this is, I love these quotes here, from the exegesis. This forces me to reconsider the discarding and annexing process by the brain in favor of a proliferation theory. Or, so irreality and perturbation are the two perplexities which confront us. Or, I dreamed I am the fish whose flesh is eaten, and because I am fat, it is good. Bob Silverberg ate me. So what's missing here is context. From my interactions with Dick, I know that many of these musings were written while he stayed up all night, sometimes in a drug haze, while pursuing his favorite source, perusing his favorite source, the Encyclopedia of Philosophy. He also retained a healthy sense of humor about his supposed tutelary spirit. Quote, on Thursdays and Saturdays, I would think it was God, he told me, while, quote, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I would think it was extraterrestrial. And sometimes I would also think it was a Soviet Union Academy of Sciences trying out their psychotronic microwave telepathic transmitter. So,
yeah, he covers it all. And like I said, it was conspiracy theory. It was aliens. It was God. It was some sort of higher mind. Everything was on the table with Dick.
Yeah. So I guess I guess my question, open-ended, take it wherever you like, is it's so curious to me. It's rare that you find anybody, let alone someone as so prolific as Philip K. Dick, that seems to be as cogent as he is insane. You know what I mean? Like he has, and I have nothing but respect for the guy, but like, on a technical level, he has classic paranoia. He's very, I don't know what the word is, masochistic. Yeah. He's very, when you hear in any interviews, he's very self-deprecating, but he has a wit about him too. He doesn't seem to take it too seriously. He is such a fascinating guy. And as I've said already in this conversation, if you only take a small surface level skim, he seems like he's really crazy. So I don't know. What do you think about all that?
Well, I remember Bishop Stephen Heller from the Gnostic Ecclesia, who's a scholar as well. He always said the difference between a mystic and a madman is that the mystic knows whom not to tell. So I don't think any of us are very sane, and some of us have open channels of communication. Some of us have better vision. So it is sort of, you might say, relative, if you would. Mm-hmm. But I think, trying to understand Phil's mind and all the things that affected him is quite an adventure. what I think most people miss or kind of gloss over is a very simple one. And Phil, when he was born, he had a twin called Jane, and she died shortly after.
Oh.
And I even say Elvis had the same thing. His brother Jesse died when he was born. And people, and in my book, or my upcoming book, argue, I mean, I think Elvis was more of a mystic than Phil, but he was hiding it because of his stature and the culture around him and everything else.
Mm.
Phil was because he was in California, Berkeley, Berkeley hippie and all libertarian. He could just talk and just throw it all out if he wanted to. Just priest, shrink. He was a sci-fi writer, so he just throw all these ideas in his books. But anyway, it's well known or accepted in society that the death of a twin really affects the other twin. It's a deep thing because they're so bonded psychologically, DNA, all that.
Mm-hmm.
But what has only really come out in the last generation is the amazing effect when a twin loses a twin at birth. It is hugely monumental and life-changing. I mean, I write, Dick was doomed from the start. So was Elvis, because, for example, there's the work of Peter O. Whitmer that I use. He was actually the drummer for the Turtles, and then he became a psychotherapist and all that. But the research shows that when you lose your twin, it is very destructive to your life. I mean, research shows that twinless survivors have a huge inclination for drug addiction, bad relationships, but at the same time, they are extremely ambitious. They are searchers. They are workaholics. And they are basically this storm that goes through people's life, for better or worse. And they tend to die young. They just self-destruct. They explode. The engine just can't take it. And both Elvis and Phil are a perfect example. Both were big-time amphetamine users. They abused prescriptions. They were extremely driven. They were extremely successful. They were just, that's really the characteristic of a twinless twin when you look at other twinless twins in the research. In fact, another one too was Liberace. Now, as you can see, Liberace was very, like Elvis, was very flamboyant, very driven, and also in many ways very self-destructive in his own ways. Phil was that way too. Phil could be he was obviously very flamboyant with his writing and with his conversations with people. These twinless twins are always looking for the bigger question because they cannot understand why they survived and the twin didn't. What happened? Did I put my foot on the throat while we were in the belly? We both came under the same conditions. We had basically the same body. Research shows that twins will dance and play, so they're like one soul in the womb. And they can't, and it really breaks their heart. It breaks their mind. I mean, and I don't even have to look at research because Dick was very open that he said that the most significant and monumental event of his life was the death of his twin Jane. And his entire life, all his writings was trying to figure out why it happened and what it meant for the universe at large. And of course, twinless twins tend to be very dualistic. They think they really separate into us and them, and light and darkness, fame and failure. I mean, but they take it to huge extremes, very dualistic, because they're always trying to figure out what happened to their twin and where is their twin. And again, Dick was very open. He said everything he wrote was trying to figure out why Jane had died and what it meant for the larger questions of the universe. He even said in an interview about Jane, he has this quote saying, "Well, I guess I got the other milk. I guess I got all the milk." So there's this massive guilt and pain to twinless survivors that again kind of feeds into their driven, workaholic, self-destructive, bipolar essence. And again, Dick is a perfect example. Elvis Presley is, Liberace, and there's many others. So that right there tells you why Phil was Phil in the end.
Wow. Yeah, that's an angle that I was unfamiliar with, but it makes perfect sense. And the twin research is fascinating too. I don't know a set of twins that where one was a survivor, but I do have in the family some older family members. One is a surviving twin, and one died when they were in their mid 30s. And from just seeing that, I can say with what little experience I have that it is truly uncanny seeing what kind of effect, that'll have on you. It certainly destroyed this individual a bit, and
It's like
it's intense.
you live thinking half of you is missing, and where's this other half? And
Yeah,
everything. And that's probably what really drove Dick to the Gnostics, because, as you know, the Gnostics were obsessed with syzygies and pairs and all that. If there's a Jesus, there's a Sophia, and everything has a counterpart, both in heaven and earth, and we have a higher self and all this other stuff. So the idea of dualities is huge in Gnosticism, obviously big with Carl Jung. If everything casts a shadow and we have a counterpart within us and all that. So all of that certainly probably led Phil to Gnostic ideas. And of course, and then I write in the book with Elvis, it also led him to very similar ideas.
yeah, interesting. Well, I do want to get into Elvis soon here. So with as some final cherries on top here, beginning to sweep it all in, bring it round home plate. I think, I came across in a couple articles. Granted, no one followed through with this comparison, but it hadn't even crossed my mind before, and I thought it was an interesting note to bring up. The fact that if you only knew this story of PKD from a surface level, someone that might ring kind of similar is L. Ron Hubbard. Like Philip K. Dick was so metaphysical. He was getting very spiritual and philosophical and more open about it towards the end of his life. But if you just look into Philip K. Dick at all, I mean, Hubbard was a trash writer for one, and it's his actions speak for themselves over and over and over again. PKD, he was very timid about talking to people, about talking with people about these things, and he only told people, like one of his wives, the wife he had, that while some of these initial experiences were happening, and some very close friends, he never intended the exegesis to be published. His family was worried that the publication of it might attract unwanted attention, and I guess one of the biggest factors being he was always willing to hear someone else's side of the story. And that is, I mean, if you're looking for some sort of clear indication that someone is not a manipulative personality, it's that right there. If there's no single instance, like if Philip K. Dick is such a milquetoast individual, so mild-mannered that he is willing to give people credence when they're being derogatory and calling him crazy. He says, yeah, I might be a little crazy. Like there's no agenda in any single instance. He's just truly a philosopher and a man trying to just figure out what the fuck happened to him and what is happening to him. And I've always been so deeply inspired by his honesty. He never really, even when it seemed like in interviews where you can listen to him talk, even when he seemed hesitant to get into subject matter that was personal, he never really shied away from it. I heard him apologize over and over for rambling, even though this person was interviewing him. He's just one of those kinds of people. And I think Philip K. Dick is not only is his writing extremely legendary for a reason, but I think, perhaps why his legacy persists so much and is inspirational to me is because his thoughts, his life, and his philosophy in particular is just as insightful as his work. He was just as much a philosopher when it's all said and done as he was a science fiction author, and that makes looking into the life and times of PKD really daunting.
Oh yeah, he was a seeker. He was seeking the bigger. He was seeking to understand reality. I mean, and what did he say was it an interview where he says his two main goals was trying to understand what is a human and what is reality, and that was the struggle. Again, those two dualities that he was always looking for, and a lot of it that depends. Again, happened in childhood. I mean, you're talking about L. Ron Hubbard. I don't know. Obviously, I have my opinions about him, but I don't know that much about him because the two questions that are simple when you're trying to figure people out, and as much as people don't want this sort of simplistic view, but it's true, is one, if you're looking in the conspiracy world, it's follow the money, right? Where does the
Right.
money go? Who benefits? Then you can find out about a person. The other question is, sorry, but what were your mommy and daddy issues and what childhood trauma you have? And people don't want to look at that, but I'm like, these archetypes are powerful. When we are young, we are like computers just absorbing everything, and our consciousness is developing. And one trauma, like losing your twin or losing your parent when you're young, or that can define you for your entire life. And sorry, but mommy and daddy issues matter. You look at, again, going back to the twinless thing, it was interesting because when after Dick was born, his mother, Dorothy, became very detached to the world. And can't blame her, right? She lost one of her children in really bad conditions. We can talk about, there was poverty involved and other things. And Phil even started blaming her for the death of his sister. And that created a bad tension between Dick and women, but it also created this play space where he's trying to understand women and the divine women, feminine and all that. And Elvis is the opposite. When his twin died, his mother became very attached to him. She went the opposite of K. Dick's mother. He was the world. He put her up. He was the king already. And that also did damage to Elvis because it was classic toxic helicopter parenting. But it also helped Elvis with this huge confidence, this huge drive where he thought he could do anything, right? He could be this guy who didn't know how to read music, uneducated, who just walked into a studio and said, I want to record. And, then a year or two later, he's like the biggest star in the world. So these things matter. And again, people want to gloss it over or ignore it because I always hear people doing research with Elvis or Dick is like, oh, so he lost a twin when he was young. Big deal. He got over it. That's not what makes you an adult. And I'm like, we don't forget anything as children. We don't. We absorb everything, and it causes deep damage. And unfortunately, psychology and spirituality haven't caught up. So individuals like Dick and Elvis, who were born in the 30s, they don't get the healing that they need. And you know how it is. You start creating your own shadow, your own monsters, your own dark selves, if you would. And sometimes it's good. Both Dick and Elvis, their dead twin, became their daemon and actually became a voice in their head and actually was there to help them out during many situations in their life. They become, they're always talking to this other voice. So you can call it crazy, but look at their resumes, right? Look how they changed the world.
Yeah.
The two figures that change history in so many ways. And it's interesting too, because Dick was always warning about technology. He thought it's going to destroy us. It's evil. We got to be careful. While Elvis was always like, technology's great. I'm on TV. I'm doing satellite concerts. I'm in the jukebox. I want to spend more money on equipment. So interesting how these things happen. But yeah, follow the money and go to your childhood trauma or go to the child trauma of an individual.
Yeah.
Trauma doesn't heal. As they say, trauma is timeless. It does not heal. It's always there. And Jung would agree. The shadow is always there. The complexes are always there. The question is, can we integrate them, or will they destroy us in the end because we're so fragmented?
Yeah, yeah. And on a side note feeding into that, you made me think of although they weren't twins, you know, Johnny Cash lost his brother at an early age, and it was very vocal, you know, throughout his life about how I believe his brother's name was Jack, like how Jack seemed to inspire and be a primary driving force for Johnny Cash, like, throughout his personal and his personal life and his career. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, both with Johnny and Elvis. Yeah, he had two driving forces, their dead brother and Jesus. Now, Elvis had a more cosmic Jesus, kind of the cosmic Jesus and Christ consciousness, and Johnny Cash had a more traditional Jesus image. But they were both really driven by gospel. I think people forget how shamanistic altered state of mind Pentecostalism is. And with figures like Elvis, Johnny Cash, Little Richard, and others, it was all about the sort of Pentecostal altered state of mind. And that was a huge part of their success, because they could just go into another world and tap into these energies and bring this sound that the world had never heard before.
Well, what an easy segue for me there, Miguel. I'll ask you about you know, a final closing comment at the end here about PKD, but yeah, let's talk about Elvis a bit. And I'll preface that before I volley it over to you by saying I don't know an extreme amount about Elvis, but I do know a reasonable amount, and a lot of that actually comes from my fascination over time with Johnny Cash. So I always, I guess in that kind of Blade Runner sense, I always was really attracted to, as I guess so many people are, the way Johnny Cash, you know, melded that sort of glitzy idealism. He was an idealist, but he was such a realist, and you know, everything was very, very gritty, you know, especially for the time. And the way he sort of balanced those two scales at once was something that I always gravitated towards. But and I know that there was a lot of overlap, you know, and you see Elvis in and out throughout the movie Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix. So I know about the time period and the music scene more than I do Elvis's life. So I'm really interested to hear this. Take it wherever you like.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was laughing, I was thinking, when people are asking me about Christian Gnosticism, I'd say, oh, let me give you something that might help. Yeah, or three things that we talked about. Read Philip K. Dick's Ballads. The other one is read Kierkegaard. The other one is listen to Johnny Cash. You'll get Christian Gnosticism right there. Like I said, it's a sort of gritty existentialist vibe, but at the same time, of course, it is all about this Christ within us, the hope, the glory. So
Beautiful.
I always like to tell people, yeah, check it out. And I know when I'm stuck in my Gnostic ideas, I will put some Johnny Cash, and it's like, oh, I get it now. Or I'll read Valis. But yeah, I mean, basically the thesis is, which most of the world is either, again, like the idea of twinless twins, or Philip K. Dick's very important vision of the evil face in the sky, which Elvis had this very similar vision. But they don't realize how into the occult Elvis was. And again, my book, there is a million conspiracy and sensationalistic books about Elvis, TV shows. I mean, he used to be on the tabloids. You know, remember the era you'd go to the store and the National Enquirer and all that? He was like a one-man conspiracy corporation. And there's lots of books. And some of these books are not just written by people saying, you know, he was an alien and all that, but some of the books were written by conservative Christians. From the moment he came out, people thought he was a tool of the devil, and he kind of was, because he was the blues was very important to him, and the blues is obviously based on African animistic magic, which of course brings in the trickster, which brings this sort of a devil figure that appears over and over in the blues. But he was very much in the occult, and what drove him there was, of course, more tragedy. The death of his mother was huge. Again, he and his mother had this very close and very I would say dysfunctional relationship. And other things that happened in the book, I go, with Elvis, it was like one tragedy after the other, something that broke him and kept breaking him. And at some point in the 60s, he was always a very open-minded person, especially when he came out and his own pastor turned on him, and people like Billy Graham were denouncing him, politicians were denouncing. He was dangerous, he was satanic, he was upending the status quo. He became very disillusioned with Christianity. And but he was always open-minded. When he was in the army in the late 50s, he would talk to people about reincarnation. He loved Khalil Gibran, the prophet. He did aromatherapy. He was always open-minded. But in the early 60s, he became even more disillusioned with his life, even though he had hundreds of millions in the bank and he was the #1 box office star in the world. And he was already the GOAT when it came to rock music. He was already in the Hall of Fame. He'd made his place in history, but he met somebody. His hairdresser was very much a very spiritual guy. He started talking to his hairdresser, and he just went off to the races. He became a devotee of Yogananda, Blavatsky, Manly P. Hall. He started consuming all these Freemason theosophical books. He started reading the I Ching.
Wow.
He started reading stuff like the Gospel of Thomas, the Book of Enoch, whatever it is, you name it, he started reading it.
Holy shit.
And he became just and he started practicing too. He started doing, obviously, yoga, meditation. Later on, he would start doing sex magic with his fiancée. He would do all these weird prayers, and he practiced all these mental exercises, and he became just a huge occultist. I mean, I haven't only scratched the surface of the stuff he was into, but he was also a natural born magician. He could heal people, and he could manipulate the weather. He could manipulate matter. He could do out of body things. He could do prophecy. He could read people's minds. And just, you go through his life and you go, oh my God, he's like the greatest occultist in North America and Europe has ever seen. It was insane. And my book, again, there's a lot of sensationalistic stuff, but I take it from the horse's mouth. This I find from Priscilla Presley, from the Memphis Mafia, from family, friends, girlfriends, all people that were around him would see the stuff of Elvis and see what he would do. I mean, he would get people together, like he got a signed copy of The Secret Teachings of the Ages, and he went to the studio and he got all the musicians to sit around and decode esoteric symbols, and he would tell people, if you can understand these symbols, you will understand the secrets of life. And it's the most amazing figure that I've seen when it comes to the occult, and why it's been hidden, why nobody noticed. Well, I have my theories, but it's pretty amazing.
Wow. Yeah. All throughout, the inside in my mind's eye, I was equally as fascinated as I was humored, because I could just imagine Elvis in his Elvis voice, just really deeply philosophizing and like blowing your mind. But at the same time, it's just, it's awesome.
Let's talk about the Ascended Masters, and what do you guys think of von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods? Which you read? Yeah. Do you believe in all this other stuff? Yeah. And he had many. He had extraterrestrial encounters. He had about 3 of them before. Yeah. And he was very much into the whole thing, into the ancient astronauts, all that stuff. I mean, he would be here listening to this podcast if he was alive and being like, yeah, this is my stuff. Or we would have no problem with, the red pill culture.
So it's 2 parts. One, I'm curious to hear what you think about why this story has not been brought to light. Because unless you feel like there's like an active campaign to keep it a secret, you're gonna low key change the narrative a little bit, like you're gonna low key
Big
change
time.
history a bit. Yeah, this is huge. Like this is like when all of a sudden everyone realized that on record, the Beach Boys were friends with Charles Manson, and now like and now everyone knows it. Like 10 years from now, it's going to be potentially, the way I see it, it's going to be commonplace. People are going to be like, oh yeah, you didn't know that Elvis was a freaking full-blown magician. So that's crazy, man. You really tapped into a unique vein here, and it goes to show that even in today's day and age of information overload, there's still plenty that is waiting to reach the collective eye. And so why do you think this hasn't yet?
Well, I'm still trying to speculate on it. Again, when I started writing this book in February, I didn't know anything about Elvis. I was always the Beatles person per Pulp Fiction, the Mia Wallace speech that she gives Vincent Vega. There's only two types of people in the world: Elvis people, Beatles. I always thought I was a Beatles person. But then I did ayahuasca and a voice in my head, and I went down this rabbit hole, and I was like, whoa, how? I mean, again, this is all in, like, you can go to Priscilla Presley's biography right now and open it. It says how she had headaches. Elvis would just put his hand on her head and cure her headaches. Or their grandmother that lived with Elvis, she had arthritis, and Elvis did all these rituals and cured of her arthritis. I mean, or you go to some of the exposés of his bodyguards, and they're talking about this UFO experience they had together, or how Elvis could move bush. He would like put a hand out and clouds would move and bushes would start shaking. So, and you go, well, this is all out in the open. There's no secret here. You just go to all these biographies and there's sections, and two things. Maybe sometimes the world is just not ready. I think the world is ready in 2023. I know Elvis is an archetypal figure. We have a vision of what they look like, and we have those with the founding fathers and Jesus. And when we're not ready to see them as they are, we're just not ready, both as a culture and as a country. And maybe it's time to see it. The other one too is that there's all these things, but there was always protection around Elvis. He drove people crazy because, like, the Memphis Mafia would be like, hey, let's go play some flag football. And Elvis would be like, no, we got to sit there and let's read this book about spirituality and contemplate. And they'd be like, oh, fuck. So people were like, Elvis was this, but we have this image that we want to show to the world. And many people around him didn't like it because they were traditional Americans. And so they sort of, I don't know about suppress it, but they sort of memory hold it. And the other thing too is that with Elvis, he lived the most insane life, a life where it was concerts and parties and celebrities showing up, and we're traveling on our private jet when I feel like it. And it was this chaotic, insane life that everybody around him had to, endure or not suffer, because it was a blast that the whole supernatural Elvis was just part of his bigger persona, and it just sort of got forgotten or overlooked. People would say, bodyguards and friends would say, yeah, the miracles and the magic was one thing, but then there was the parties and the flying to Hollywood to do movies and studios, and him waking up and saying, I want to fly to Colorado to get a fried peanut butter and banana sandwich at 1 a.m. It was this sort of, it was like Hermes on steroids. I call Elvis the Hermes of our era, because it was so chaotic. It was something that you have to, like, people writing biographies would have to sit down years later and sort of stop. And even the newspapers and tabloids were always pumping out stories of Elvis. It was just this giant chaos theory storm, and his magic was just part of the butterfly effect. I don't know if this is a good analogy, but having said that, I think it's just a time when we as a society are more open to it, and it's time for this other very overlooked story, which I do in whatever 250 pages. I've got 300 citations, and they're all from people around Elvis, and they all knew of his magic tricks and occult ideas and astral traveling and miracle working and beliefs and all these strange theories for them.
Man, wow, you're really blowing my mind right now, man. And I got to tell you, salute to you, because this is really giving me, and I'm going to call it right now, I think you got some real good shit in the future. This is giving me like weird scenes inside the canyon, like Dave McGowan kind of vibes.
Oh yeah.
Minus all of the nefarious implications. But I remember hearing interviews with Dave McGowan before he died, where he, I believe he got the book like from his daughter or something, or a family member, and it was something he was reading on vacation, and then all of a sudden he just started to notice all these commonalities about just weird backgrounds, people like coming from military families, and hanging out with Charles Manson, all this strange stuff going on in Laurel Canyon in the music scene. And he's just like, wait a second, I'm not reading some obscure internet forums here. This is just a biography of like the Doors or some shit like that. And
Yeah.
And he has to look into it a little more, and then all of a sudden he can't unsee it, and then he just has to put it out there. And not everyone knows Dave McGowan's name, but if anyone is vaguely interested in conspiracy theories, even from a skeptical point of view, almost everybody in that field is familiar with the idea that some dude wrote a really interesting book about all the conspiracy theories, going on in the music scene. And
Right.
I could easily see, I would be almost surprised if this didn't reach a similar level, man. Elvis is integral to the American, to the fabric of America at this point. So,
Indeed.
that's so exciting, man. And
Well, don't thank me. This was Mother Ayahuasca and Elvis. Both of them nagged me to do this, so I simply did. And I would tell your listeners too, and everybody, follow the other advice that I said beyond follow the money and look at your childhood trauma. Follow the synchronicities, because there are synchronicities happening right now, and they are telling you where you need to lean into, like what happened with me with the Elvis book. And there was a lot of synchronicities that led to the ayahuasca, and then a lot of synchronicities and voices. And if you follow these, then you will go down the road to the perfect data. If that's your mission, to create something, to find some truth, whether it's the truth about your family, some figure, or the truth about where you need to go in your life as a career and a person. But yeah, follow the things, lean into them, and you'll be fine. Again, it shouldn't even be controversial, right? It's Dick and Jung and all these guys we're talking about. So that's
Amen.
definitely my advice. I don't know
No.
if Dave McGowan did it. I don't know much life. I mean, I love his work, but I don't know. I guess he just saw a pattern.
I believe so. Yeah, I think he, if I remember correctly, he was literally on vacation, just reading a book to specifically unplug from all his conspiracy stuff, and then just couldn't help but see patterns, like hanging out on the beach, and just like, well, damn it, I can't not see this now, so I have to write this book.
Yeah, lean into it, because if you go against your soul or the gods or whatever, then it's going to be very painful. Or worse, you'll live an average life. All of us have the ability to live an extraordinary life if we listen to what the voices are saying, what the gods are saying, what the universe wants us to do.
Amen, man. Well, that is in and of itself a beautiful cherry on top, but I'd like to give you the floor to, give any final thoughts, sentiments on either Elvis and or Philip K. Dick.
Well, again, both were seekers. They were history-changing seekers who were looking for the bigger question, and were trying to understand things. Yes, they were, borrowing from the song "Caught in a Trap." from the moment they were born, and they were broken, but they kept doing what they need to do, and that's the idea which I use in my book across cultures from various different shamanistic cultures. There's the idea of the wounded healer, and that's an individual who is broken, who has immense trauma. But those are the individuals who have this second sight and can see into the spirit world. They can see into the future of the tribe, and they are a very important part of the tribe. They are shamans, but they are also, again, they are completely broken. But because they are broken, they're not really broken, because they understand how to heal people. They understand how to they see the world and the universe as one, and they understand the direction of where the tribe or individuals need to go. So as Jung would say, yes, nobody is broken. You can find your mission, even if you think the most horrible things happen to you and you think you can't overcome them. You do have a purpose. And sometimes the wounds is what open the channels to the divine and our true selves.
Damn, man. This has been a batshit crazy conversation in the best of ways. This has been really cool. We went to all corners of the strange and esoteric, whether it be metaphysics or conspiracy or speculative fiction and the like. I think if nothing else, because both Elvis and PKD are hard men to really encapsulate, but they both seem to be, if you want to try and find a way to do it, very chaos magical. And
oh yeah,
I really, I'm gonna have to look into Elvis a bit more now. You've definitely sparked my curiosity. Whenever I can understand the questions that the artist was wrestling with, it makes me appreciate the art that much more. I don't need or necessarily want to hear someone's interpretations of the art, because art is sort of that Rorschach kaleidoscopic interaction, and it's meant to be individualistic in that way. But when you can understand the inspiration, it really paints it in a whole new light. And so I guess for
even your even next time, listen to his music and feel the pain and the searching. Even with his Vegas outfits, it was that's so easy. How he's dressed, he was simply trying to copy his hero, which was Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr., because Elvis lived in such abject poverty. Like, some nights all he could eat was cornbread and water. So he one of his ways of escaping was comic books, and he loved Captain Marvel Jr., who was this poor kid who was crippled, who turned into the savior of the world. So his outfits are based on Captain Marvel, the short cape and everything else. And then the high collars. He read one time that he was looking at some book about spiritual masters, and he noticed that one commonality was their high collars.
Huh.
So he started wearing high collar. Most people think he's trying to be like Napoleon. It's like, no, he really thought he was like an ascended master. So when you see these things, you realize, oh, this is not just some goofy, extroverted consumer show that Elvis was doing. It was really all part of a very spiritual thing that he did.
Fascinating. Okay, a final brief question that I have to ask now. We explored the integrity of Philip K. Dick a fair amount. Now, it seems like Elvis was a pretty cool, seeker, as you put it. But did he come across like he was a legendary rock star? So how much of him was just a total like Motley Crue level douchebag, or was he a pretty legit, like a guy you'd like to buy a drink and have a chat with?
Oh, certainly. He was very approachable, even at the height of his career. Even when his mind was so drug addled, and he was, in his fat Elvis stage, he was still very approachable. He was very kind. He was the kind of person that if he heard like a friend of him needed an operation, or somebody in the band or needed something, he would just like write $100,000 check, or he would try to talk to them on a personal level about their problem. I mean, both Elvis and Dick, again, we go to this polarity thing, could be so kind and empathic and friendly. And Elvis his status didn't matter to him. He was so, you could just sit there and talk to him and you talk about everything. But they both, because of, again, their past, the drugs, the extreme workaholism, and their sort of self-destructive path, did have tendencies of being extremely cruel at times, extremely aloof. And they did their damage. And again, losing their twins, mommy issues, they always had trouble in relationships with women. They just couldn't work things out. I think Bill was married 5 times, and of course Elvis, forget about it, you know.
Yeah.
He had women galore, and some of the time he just had women as friends, but it was messy.
Well, yeah, both very flawed, but it sounds like with both people, and especially Philip K. Dick, from what I'm familiar with, they both seem to be very open about their flaws and readily willing to question them and investigate and, you know, integrate and transmutate. So, you know, salute to both of those dudes. And thank you so much for coming back on the program, Miguel. It's a genuine pleasure as always, man.
Always fun, man. Thanks.
Would you like to give people, you know, all the necessary info on where they can find your latest action?
My latest action, yeah, just go to my homepage, thegodabovegod.com, or type in the search bar Aeon Byte, AEON. Next word is Byte, BYTE, Gnostic Radio. There's my website with my podcast, books, videos, articles, whatever. There's a whole bunch of stuff if you want to learn about Gnostic and Hermetic thought. Nothing on Elvis yet, because again, the book just got accepted by a publisher, so I got to figure out my Elvis online strategy, which will include making a lot of Elvis fans angry, because they don't want to. A lot of them don't want to hear it. They think he was just a good old boy Protestant country boy who.
Yeah, they're going to be pissed in Nashville. They're going to be pissed in Nashville. So, but I can't wait to see that. Yeah, you heard it here, folks. I got the big time freaking Elvis expose author on well before he became known as the big time Elvis expose author. So, but yeah, this is Black Hoodie Alchemy. I am Anthony Tyler here on the Fringe FM. We've been talking with Miguel Conner of Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio, a real gem of an individual, just like our two subjects today. And yeah, I hope all you listeners out there enjoyed the conversation, got something out of it. Keep your eyes peeled from Miguel's book. It will be coming out next year. And yeah, take care out there. Smoke weed and God bless.
Peep the revolution, times of change. Bear witness as we break free from times of chains. Lines of Cain, the devil tormented to the minds insane. Rise again from the ashes, fall and rise to fame. Eyes of pain, burn circles through the fabric of life. On average night, the satellites be watching the block. They got us caged in space to the dollars and clocks. Got a gang called the cops that got us on lock. We fly a burning flag, democratic process engulfed in flames. Where justice is applied, man, begging for your change. And nothing's guaranteed but taxes and debt. You get both if you pay to crash a passenger jet. Don't make sense how we go broke waiting on paychecks. Stomach pain, sweat to maintain just to pay rent. Poor man, indigenous to dead enslavement. Righteous man, protester dead upon the pavement. The struggle got me stressed. Weight on my chest, feel like a lead vest. When can I sleep? When can I let my head rest? The struggle got me stressed. Weight on my chest, feel like a lead vest. When can I sleep? When can I let my head rest?